People will say logged in.
They'll have to, I'll just open this one right here, participants. You might have to click like, you know, whomever.
Do you have people on there now?
I do not have, nobody is on there now. You're on there now.
Hey John, that door's locked.
See, we want popular demand, you gotta stay.
Once we get you in,
So, the other thing, Dave was at our select board meeting the other night.
Yep.
We mentioned to him that you folks have never had an organizational meeting. Did you put that on the agenda?
An organization.
So you should, after town meeting, just like the select board, have an organizational meeting.
we did have one.
Well, Dave said you never had one. So he said you,
Maybe it's a semantic thing.
so on your organizational meeting, you elect a chair or vice chair.
Oh, yeah, we did.
And then in your organizational meeting, you state in, like, what's your paper of record and where are you gonna put your posting? You do not have to mimic the select board with your posting, but you do have to state where things will be posted.
Can I just make a request that door gets locked when you're done? You know how to lock it? Yeah, just unseal it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay,
Excellent.
so if you have
I
that,
did
then-
rehearsals for the shows for years.
okay, so there was confusion.
Yeah.
about that.
But can we now, if you wanted to make a change, can you do those organizational meetings, or is it
No,
on?
no,
That's because you were.
It's not a new place for me. I'm meeting one of our daughters and husband and grandson to do some travel.
It's that kind of stuff that creates so
Sounds
much
great.
confusion.
All
Sounds
right, so
great.
I'll put it on the agenda.
Yeah, when you should have, the first agenda item should always be as additions to the agenda,
Uh-huh.
and then you vote to
Yeah.
add those.
All right, thanks. Call this up, because I don't have a printed agenda.
Do you usually have anybody on Zoom?
Yeah, we do.
We often do, yeah. No more than 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Just so they can see this, can I sign into the Zoom thing?
I think I technically don't know. how to
Yeah, I
do it,
think
but
you
yeah,
can.
but in terms
I
of
think you can.
permission,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, do we have minutes? Oh, let's see. I just pulled up the agenda. Let me see about the minutes.
Review and vote on past HPC minutes.
We could table that. Sure. But if Jay comes, he might have them.
There he is.
Here he is. Okay. Do you have minutes from the last meeting?
I looked, and the last meeting was postponed or something. I looked everywhere, and I don't think I did them, nor could I find them anywhere?
I do have the draft minutes from May 15th, which would have been the last official meeting.
Did we vote to approve those?
You know, remember, we met in June, and then we said we had to reschedule it.
All right.
Now, from that June 4th meeting, we rescheduled it.
I searched everywhere for it, and I don't think I did them, right?
Yes, you did. They're right here.
Right?
These are them.
Those are the minutes?
Yeah, from May 15th.
Those are May 15th. But it's like June 18th.
But we
Yeah,
haven't,
remember,
We've only had-
the
we only had
first
one
in
meeting.
June and said, no, we can't, because we didn't
That's why I couldn't
post.
find the June 4th minutes.
That's right. Can you send this out to everyone?
All right, why don't we bring this meeting to order? The first item of business is meeting adjustments. I had a quick announcement that I wanted to do in an executive session at the end, very briefly. And we've been requested by the select board to have a organizational meeting, which we've had partially, but I think, but I'm not sure I understood that, so maybe we should table that for the next meeting, so get a little clearer. Apparently the things were communicated to the chair that weren't to the rest of us. So the minutes to
I just sent them to you,
sent the
the
minutes.
May 15th.
Yeah, okay. And I recall seeing those. You distributed those, right?
He did.
Yeah, okay.
That's me, I think, doing that
I didn't know you had a soundtrack here. So are there any adjustments or additions to to those minutes that we have?
The May 15th minutes.
Yeah.
David's joined. David's joined.
David's joined here, okay. All right. I'll take a motion to accept this. Second? Sure. All right, all in favor?
Aye. Right.
All right. The item is the correspondence. Is there anything to report from the secretary on that?
There's been so much correspondence, but how much is,
Official correspondence?
no,
Okay.
except for one thing. Did everybody get a copy of the Supreme Court filing? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to bring up things that probably everybody had, I just wanted to make sure, I guess that was
Yeah, I
important.
think it was distributed to.
Yeah.
Kevin, I guess you're next up. So
Yeah.
if you wanted to go ahead, I wanted to have I don't know, how much did you overhear what Tom and I were talking about this thing about should and shall, and the fact of having a enforceable plan for Act 250 purposes if ordinances are delayed or don't come to pass.
Yeah, so first off, I'm Kevin Geiger, I'm with the Regional Planning Commission. Can we just go around and say who's who, because he probably don't know.
I'm sorry, I didn't know it was a session.
Just do introductions.
Oh, my name is Kim Wood. I live in Heartland, and I'm here because I'm interested in whether you want to talk about the,
I'm not, but they may.
Right. You could do something very briefly on that, so she doesn't have to wait all week.
Oh, no.
However you want to do it.
John.
So,
John Magliocco. Jay Guerrero.
I'm Dan German.
Kate Donahue.
Steve Cohn.
Bruce Murray.
Marie Barrett.
So here's what I was going to do tonight, and then we can figure out the agenda and all. So I have two things tonight. One is that we are working pro bono with the Planning Commission and the Select Board to get the town plan done. And so we're going to kind of clear it off for the Planning Commission, get it over to the Select Board, and then get it done and adopted. And that process intersects something that we're doing on our own motion, which is the regional plan map, which I have for you. And so I want to talk about that because our future land use map and your future land use map somewhat intersect. So I was going to hit those two things. In so doing, I can kind of talk about the effects of doing things around Act 250. So if it's okay with you, I was going to do the regional plan stuff and then the town plan stuff.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we can, so.
Yeah.
Did you have a particular question about that decision, or, because it's not on our agenda tonight, the decision speaks for itself.
Sorry about that, I don't mean to have been to one of those meetings before. But I do have a question, is it okay to take a few minutes of your time?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to get into a discussion, but sure, go ahead.
So I'm not really familiar with how these things work, but my question is, I was looking at the ruling, it was sent like on the Heartland listserv.
Yeah.
Someone sent it, and so I was looking at it, and I mean, I guess my basic question is there anything else that we can do to try to prevent it from happening?
The short answer is no. There's long shot involved, you ask for re-argument and things, but I think there's no plan to do anything, and there's no realistic way to get this thing overturned. And I don't believe that anyone else other than the planning commission was a party to the Supreme Court appeal. So I think the answer is no.
So just a related question is, when I was looking at the ruling, and please forgive me for my ignorance, but when I was looking at the ruling, it sounded like the intent of the owner, the person of Sunny, is to do the building, and then for the remaining parcel, which I think is like 12 or 13 acres or something, to use it for, I think it said berries and fruit trees. And then when I looked at near the end of the ruling, it sounded like a condition that was placed on it was a condition related to the building, like they can't change the building at some point to something like a hotel or other kind of, like there were a list of things that they couldn't do. But that's the only condition that I saw on that. And I was just wondering, like, because they said their intent to use those remaining acres of the parcel, like, does that mean that they're bound to abide by that? Or would they have to put a condition on that ruling saying, we approve it, but in addition to this condition on the building, they have to not further those remaining acres?
My understanding, and this is more generally of Act 250 than to this particular case, but Act 250 permits are given often with conditions, and if you want to go beyond that, you have to reapply to Act 250, so they would have to pretty much seek either an amendment to their existing application, which would start the process over again, or file a new application.
But could Heartland do that? Like saying that they want to impose additional?
No, that was our time, that we had our chance to do that at the Act 250 hearings, and there was some give and take, but our position was that the position we took was that the project didn't comply with the town plan, so there was no point in trying to insist on conditions. That could have been maybe a possibility for settlement, but that's long past.
So then, is like, and I know from looking at minutes and the agenda for today that the town plan that was discussed in the ruling is currently being worked on.
That's what we're doing tonight. Yeah.
So in the ruling, I saw that the dissenting, which was J. Carroll and Eaton, they dissented. Like, is there any effort to use those words that they put, like the reason that they were dissenting, but get those words into the town plan to prevent something like this from happening again?
Yes, we're considering, this town plan is being drafted with the knowledge that we're probably, and now, we're not going to prevail in that case. So So we are taking that into consideration. I don't mean to rush you, but we have a
Yeah.
representative here tonight, so maybe if you had, another question quickly?
No, that's it.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so I really appreciate.
And you're welcome to stay for this, for the.
Yeah, I'll probably, hang out. Maybe I'll come to another meeting at some point.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have more meetings.
Yeah.
Just so you know, on the regional planning commission side, we're part of all Act 50s. We opposed Sunnymead in there. We did not participate in the appeal. We have since changed our regional plan and closed what we feel is a loophole through. And so if that project were to apply today, we don't think it would fly. We've clarified the regional plan and so that's not what we intended.
Okay, well, I guess the other thing is like, I lived in Heartland for 37 years, and I really love it here, and I really love that piece of land. Like, you come home from work, and it's just like so welcoming and peaceful and natural. It's just beautiful, and if there's any way, and I know that Heartland has paid a lot, like, for the litigation and everything, but if there's any way to keep doing it, I would love it, but just,
I think it's it's up to them if they want to, build now, but they've prevailed legally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
It's really nice seeing you all. Thank you.
So I'm going to leave my sound here off so we don't echo, but maybe the owl will pick me up. And hopefully people out in Zoom land can see what we're seeing here, which is our presentation on our process. So I'm going to talk about the regional land use map, our map, and I kind of begin with a little background, and then I go through and I will show you our map, and I will leave you our map when I get done. We're not fixing the map tonight, but we want you to look at that map and think about that map. We are in the process of meeting with all our towns and doing this right now. And the idea is that hopefully by winter time, we've done that, and then we've got the master map for the entire region. So, first off, the reason we've had a future land use map for a long time. That's not a new thing. We've had a regional plan for a long time, not a new thing. The map has requirements, and the policies stick on areas on the map. I say that just because, what's a future land use map? The reason you have a map is there's a policy that goes with an area, and you have to figure out the area that goes with it. The legislature last year told regional planning commissions for the first time, you shall use certain future land use areas. And they did that, so all of the regional future land use maps look the same across the state. So they actually gave us names and somewhat purpose statements for that, so everybody is doing this right now. As we work, we're also touching base with our neighboring regional planning commissions, because especially for you, like Windsor's right there up against the edge. It isn't just woods and then there's a village far off. So we're trying to make sure that the edges look a little similar. That's the most important one for you all, probably. And so there we have it. So we have to do some stuff. And let's see if this will keep going. Should go to the next one. There we go. So part of the way we came up with the future land use map is we had to look at a variety of things. And so we have villages, basically rural, outside villages, the industrial, they said call that enterprise, we've got enterprise areas. And then we've got 3 flavors of rural. Right now in our regional plan map, we have 2. We have rural and then forest-based resource areas. And that's now 3. So we have rural, which you can think of as low-density housing, rural ag forestry, which is working farms and forests, and then rural conservation, which is hinterland, largely driven by where the highest priority forest blocks and connecting blocks are. Yeah, was there a question? So this is where we are right now. We're doing the outreach. We're meeting with every town. By December, we'll hopefully be done with that. Then our board will start looking at it. If we need to come back to towns, we will a little bit. And then we're ready for a hearing, basically a year from now. And then we're done. Because by law, we have to be done by the end of December of 26. And so to do that, we really need to be in hearings by June 26, just because of the.
But where does that leave a town is also in the process of mapping?
Yeah, our map and your map don't have to look exactly the same, and so that's okay. What's most important, probably from the town's point of view, is that you have village designation, which is not a land use thing, it's not a zoning thing, it's a tax incentive thing. Yeah. And that way, if somebody wanted to fix up a building here, they can potentially go get a tax incentive. Those areas somewhat drive our maps, and I'll show you that a little bit. In that we have to use that area. And what we've done is we made it bigger. We can't make it smaller, but we made it bigger. And that's the main place that the two have to look at each other. But again, your rural conservation area doesn't have to look like ours. We have a couple of things where certain things have to jive with ours if you're going to come for regional approval, which you won't.
Well, how about the interchange area?
Yeah, we are getting rid of all our interchange areas, for example, and so I think that's just rural. We'll see it in a second.
If you're, Kevin, if you're getting rid of them, doesn't mean we have to get rid of them?
No. And this is just statute. What we have to do, we have to consider the use of resources and the consequences of growth and development for the region and the state as well as the community. We put that out because some communities are like, well, this is what we want, and we're like, good, that's what you want, but we have to think on this larger scale. And then the biggest thing is maintaining the historic pattern of village centers separated by rural countryside. And that really gets to this issue of 3 corners and 4 corners not being one giant 7 corners as we go forward. And we have to look at protecting the viability of ag and forest lands. Long story short, what we're ending up with is you'll have expanded village areas, and the conservation areas will get smaller, but our policies won't actually change that much out there. They'll just go over here into now what's called rural ag and forestry on that side. And to me, that intersects the town plan a little bit. Both your town plan stands on its own in Act 250, but your town plan then also is the basis for any bylaws that you do. In Act 250, it's kind of nice if it's more clear, if that's the only thing you have. But if you have bylaws, then bylaws are great because you just do it under your bylaws. Whether you have anything of that or not, we still have a regional plan, and our stuff is mandatory in Act 250. The only thing that we really don't want is you to have a plan and us to have a plan, and then somebody's in Act 250 and the plans go this way. Because then we get into a tussle. Your plan actually overrules our plan, unless it's a substantial regional impact, and then our plan overrules your plan. Sometimes we have to go to court and deal with that. We won some and lost some on those.
Well, if we're talking rural areas, is this okay that I'm interrupting you? We didn't, at least in the town plan that we're working on, we didn't really distinguish between conservation, wildlife corridors. We just sort of said if it wasn't rural residential or mixed use or village, it was rural. And it sounds to me like there's, at least under the state guidelines, there's some distinction there about what's developable in a.
Yeah, you guys did something that we're going to suggest you don't do. You guys did an overlay land use area, essentially, in your previous town plan, which had that, you basically took our green blob, as it were, and said, oh, in those areas, there's more strategy, policies. We would say, take whatever that area is and make it a future land use area that's something less than just straight rural. I'll show you ours, what we've come up with for you all, so you can see it. As some of you may remember from way back, the data, even though if one were to be in an airplane and look at Heartland, it looks like a lot of trees, the data indicate that you don't have very good habitat. It's nothing personal, so the data says. So it says that forest blocks, you don't have high priority forest blocks or high priority connectivity, mainly because you have scattered development and parcels that have chopped up those, and when the computer looks at those things, it goes, this stuff chopped up. Doesn't mean bears don't live there and whatnot, but it means from the data side, it's not great.
But isn't that a function of a lot of roads that
And
historically have been?
And the roads, yeah, and it's, you know, as people, we don't think of a road that much as a big thing, but a road actually, just a road, cut in half, and if any of you remember, probably years ago, when I kind of virtually cut the Mona Lisa in half, I'm like, it's still the Mona Lisa, it's just got this little ribbon down the middle, so what's the big deal? Well, that would be a big deal, right? So that's the same thing with habitat. We don't feel as humans, but bears, and especially if you're little salamanders or whatever, a road can be a physical barrier, even though we hop, skip, and jump over. This has to do with the these are the new areas that we have to use, and so we have to use downtown center, village area. You're going to be this village center pretty much, and then we're going to have the three flavors of rural general, rural ag forestry, rural conservation. As you go towards conservation, do less.
Hey, Kevin?
Yes.
What, as far as this, we don't want to have cross purposes, town plan and regional plans.
Yes.
What do forest blocks turn into?
So forest blocks for us are either rural ag and forestry or rural conservation. The rural conservation stuff is meant to be, by statute, they've told us, a functionally connected habitat, I think is the words they use. And so that's really got to be big blocks and where the animals aren't moving. Whereas if you had a chunk of active forestry that's maybe not that connected to thing, well, that would be rural ag and forestry. Great, they're going to grow trees, cut them down. But it really doesn't function for that habitat stuff as much. And certainly ag lands. Ag lands are great. Ag lands, depending upon their use, corn isn't very good habitat for much at all. Pasture can be, depending upon how it's managed. But of course, most farms own more forest than they own ag. So this is just an oversimplification of what we have right now. Right now, we have villages of some sort, rural general, and then what we call a forest-based resource area out there. And what will happen is we're going to take some of the rural and some of the forest, and it will become the new rural ag and forestry.
It will become which one?
The new rural ag and forestry. And that's because we didn't put any ag in our forest-based resource area, because we drew those lines just for forest. And so a lot of our rural is where our ag actually is. And the legislature did not say, make two areas, an ag area and a forest area, which would have been kind of nice, but that's not the rule that I have, so we have to deal with that as best we can. We have different policies in there about whether you're actually forest or farm. So that's the new rural ag forestry. And this is somewhat how we did it. We really looked at parcelization. You know, if you're a 10-acre chunk of forest, you're not functionally a forest anymore. Nobody wants to log you, that type of thing. Whereas you could be a smaller piece of ag, and we could look at you there. We tended to use 20 acres as a cutoff. We looked at conserved lands. We looked at current use, even though current use is not a very tight restriction. Conservation easements are. And then we looked at the data where the priority and high priority forest blocks are. We also looked at large wetland complexes, given the state wetland data. And this is just, this is Chelsea Village. I think it's Chelsea. Should be Chelsea. Yeah, it's Chelsea. You're not that familiar with Chelsea, but that's okay. This is just a schematic. So first off, there's a lot of floodplain. Chelsea's our worst town in the region for floodplain. Virtually all the villages in the floodplain in there. Outside the village, we have all these steep slopes down in the village. So you're like, well, don't be in here. Well, don't be out there. Where are you going to be? And then they actually have sewer and water. So of course we want you where there's sewer and water. We don't want you too floody, and we don't want you up here on the steep stuff. So I think of it as pressure. Like we want to squeeze development into the dense area, but it's got to be big enough outward to satisfy the needs of the community. And so that's where they currently are. This little mustardy block is the state designation for tax purposes. It's not their zoning. This is the future land use area right now in the regional plan, which is much bigger than the state designated village. And if any of you have dealt with the state designation, they're very parsimonious on where they put that village boundary. What's going to happen is we've made our area even bigger to take into account a couple of things, and our area becomes the designated area. So in 2026, after we get all done with this map is the map, and there won't be any more going to the state and trying to figure out what's going to be the designated area. The designated area will just be our map. So it would be important, as you look at the red area on your map, to go, think more like bringing it out than bringing it back, but you might go, oh, you know, that's too far that way. But if there's some parcel where you go, oh, well, that place is where they were thinking of building the whatever, then you want to include that. The biggest policy thing, and this is really the big policy thing on a regional plan, is there are no stores outside that area, period. So if something triggers Act 250 and it's a store, it can't happen outside that area.
Are there distinctions within the district for?
Within this area?
Like different size commercial projects? Or
nope.
Okay.
And for us, it's stores is what we call principal retail, and so that may be one of the things that we try to put in your plan, because we distinguish different kinds of retail. So we have what we call secondary retail. So Pompanusic Mills in East Thetford, they're a furniture plant and they sell furniture. They're not a furniture store, they're a furniture plant that sells furniture. Secondary retail, fine. Service-based retail, you're a tire warehouse. They put on tires and stuff, they sell tires too, but they're not just like pure tire sales. So that's fine, that can go outside the red area. Resource-based industry, which is what the court looked at Sunnymead, which is what we did not intend them to look at. It's because we were meaning farm stand. And we meant a certain kind of farm stand, and the court said, oh, this is kind of like farm stand. We were like, yeah, that's not. So now we have been very clear. What we meant there is you're a sawmill, great sawmill, Route 5, you know, they sell some boards, other things, but there's not a great big building. You're a dairy and you have a creamy stand. It's not a great big building, all that type of stuff. And so now the regional plan clearly says for those resource-based retail, 2,000 square feet is the limit.
So these regional plans would be controlling for Act 250
yes.
Almost as if it were a town plan, right?
Well, they control, yes, they're...
If our map is, if we do mapping closer, similar to yours, it would be...
It's good.
And define our districts the same way.
Yes, but I mean, as it is right now, if a Sunnymead were to come along, you know, across the way or something, our regional plan is very clear, no bigger than 2,000 square feet. Because we meant to allow and to encourage even, you're a sawmill and you're selling the boards, or you're we have a granite stuff, and Verdi Antique up in Rochester, maybe they're gonna sell rocks. But you don't do a great big store. So the big thing is this. The other thing about why this is big is because there are new housing targets. And so there's a state housing target, which became a regional housing target, which is not in our regional plan right now because we didn't have it, but it will be. And in there now we have to make a local housing target. So there's a Heartland housing target that we have. And so one of my questions, because I don't know the answer, is do we need to put that in the new update of the plan? We never had it before, so we couldn't do it before. And I think we do now. So that might be one of the things that we put in there.
You're saying on a numeric basis?
It's on a numeric basis.
Yeah, so that's what would, rather than the verbiage we have in the plan, we'd actually put, well, we put numbers, but what are the numbers saying? Are they obligations or are they targets?
That's it. It's a pure target. There is nothing happens if you don't do it. It drives us in that the legislature said the core villages have to be able to have a substantial majority of housing growth. And so we've got a housing target out there. So we said, okay, more than half of that housing target has to land in the red area. So we got to draw a red area that would actually work. And not having sewer and water does not help that red area stay small. Where we have sewer and water, we can figure there's going to be more dense than where we don't.
Yeah, we have zero here. So.
You have zero, right? And so that has come into, when I show you your map, that has come into why we've had to stretch the villages some because of the housing target. And we talk about the housing target in our plan a lot. You'd be able to look at that somewhat and go, okay, we can steal some of that if we want. It is just a target. It's the target for 2030, which is coming right up. It is 3,640 units for the region. So yours is like 220 or something. I forget the number again, but it's a big number.
Yeah, that's a big number.
And it's a big number, especially if you don't have sewer and water. Yes.
I go back to the shape of the red.
Yes.
And you said my words, not yours, you wanted it to be squattier or chunkier than you do want it to be elongated.
Yes, that's actually true. Yeah, we try to opt, if everything else was equal, it would be round.
It'd be round, you said?
Yeah,
Oh.
if that was the way the land was. But here we couldn't, because of those steep slopes and stuff, we couldn't go out this far. And we tried to stay where they had sewer and water. If you're familiar with Chelsea, again, you're kind of flooding in the middle. So we went a little further this way. That's why we kind of basically went out here and up 113 some, and a little more on the north end of the village. As we're out of the flood zone, we're close enough.
So Kevin, they have water and sewer there?
They do, yeah. Chelsea. Only 9 of our towns have any form of water and sewer. So there's our housing targets. 220 is yours. Our regional plan drafted, where we talk about housing, we are very clear, we are not going to meet our housing target. Like, it's impossible. For a variety of reasons, we would have to build housing many, many times faster than we've built housing before. And just the labor and the money isn't there. The other problem is the cost of that housing. And I was at a conference today. You're talking about $500,000 and rising for one unit in a box. So if you look at the units going up, in Burlington or in Hartford or whatever, you go, this is a 42-unit building, whatever. On average, those are $500,000 a piece to build. You can't build a single-family home for under $600,000 basically nowadays. And so what we have is this price spread. And the way we talk about in our regional plan is for the average family to buy the average home, they need an average subsidy of $90,000 to buy that. So we could think of, basically to meet our public housing goals, the public would give every new landowner $90,000 to buy down their purchase price. And that way we can meet our housing targets. For the region, that means $250 million of public subsidy in the next 5 years in our region, just to meet our targets. And that number, right?
Is housing synonymous with housing unit?
Housing units.
Not single family housing?
No, we use units, a house is a unit, an apartment is a unit.
Yeah, okay.
And in fact, in our regional plan, we try to use homes. Because wherever people are, it's their home. And housing people have a mental connotation with housing that's negative, and if you say home, it's more positive, but we actually live at home.
And in that, we would include certainly manufactured housing, but
Oh, yeah.
what about mobile homes?
Oh, yeah.
We'd include those.
Yeah. And mobile homes right now are kind of dollar for dollar the best bet by far.
Even down to like a single one.
Yep. Yeah, because the new mobile home construction standards are pretty darn good. There's questions about financing and, basically getting equity out of those homes and stuff that are good questions. Where we see and where the industry sees a lot of the price, trying to shave the price off, is modular, not just like one modular, but, four-story modular construction.
But, so I just don't see a scenario in here for that there's going to be a lot of new housing built.
What we look at is there's been a lot of public dialogue about, zoning's the boogeyman and stop the housing going. You guys don't have zoning. It's not like, everybody's building houses in Heartland and not building in Woodstock. In our view, it's going to take significant public involvement to construct the housing we need. We can probably get, luxury homes here and there, but that's not what we need.
I will tell you, I just saw, which surprised me, pallet housing is now becoming a very big deal. And that's
Did you say
exactly.
pallet housing?
Pallet housing.
That's a house made out of pallets?
No, but it
Palletized?
makes small look large. And I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
The
It's
housing units
colorful like a pallet.
housing units can get small. That's one way to cut your costs down, is to make them smaller.
Yes,
Even down to the micro housing, they still have to be code compliant.
right.
And that's why we get in the butt. That's a different story with tiny homes and all that.
But what can you do in a town plan or a regional plan to encourage the construction of housing?
Yes, and so let me use that share. And what you can do is you can basically have a very strong stance that you're pro-housing and you'd like housing to go here. And to me, try to do the other things that aren't the regulatory side. So if the town owns land, okay, put it over there. If the town has fee structures, we were just talking about the Middlebury. Middlebury is a big stone crops, big number of units going in Middlebury right now. The town said, you build this all. When you get done, that's our town road. We will take over the town road that you're building to our spec, but you're building it at your cost in there. You're building the sewer in there. We will take that over as our sewer when you get done. So you don't have any of those carrying costs. That's a $140 million project.
So they basically tell the developer, you build it, we'll take it over.
Yeah. So there's an example of the town going, well, we're going to step into this. That cuts your costs, a little bit, but it doesn't bring you down 500,000 to 200,000.
Right there, it says audio.
That's true. Okay. Hi, George.
So what do I roll right there?
Yeah, George Lewis.
That's
Right
it.
there.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about your map, hopefully, here. I have your map. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share this. And I have the paper version of this, so don't worry about like, oh, I can't see it all. I will zoom in some. So I'm going to share this map here, so people on Zoom can see what we're seeing. Okay. This is a 40 megabyte file, so we just didn't email it to you what we can use. And so we have insets for North Heartland, 4 corners and 3 corners. And so just, I'll just kind of stay here for a second. So
I gotta move.
You come closer. So you can see the clear areas are rural. The blue areas are our rural ag and forestry, and you have almost no green areas, almost no rural conservation. The only one you really have is up there by Beachy Gorge.
Well, we do have a lot of conserved land.
Yes, and so you might say, you might tell us, well, we'd rather, I don't know, some chunk out to the west or something also be rural conservation. So that's certainly something that you would think about. You might also go, oh, we really think that such and such an area is already relatively built up. I'm right here in this top little part. What's this? Is that Clay Hill Road up here?
No. Oh, wait, I can't see. Is it the shadow of your hand?
That's the road that runs down.
Yeah.
Into North Heartland?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Clay Hill.
And so you can see, like in this little area in the northeast, the people out there, and Zoom can't see what I'm pointing at, but there's a little area there where the parcel sizes are quite small. And so you might go, well, that doesn't make sense. Why don't you just extend this rural area here over and cover that a little more? For example, that's the type of thing where you might make an argument and go, oh, okay. In general, if it's heavily parcelized, it's gone into rural, even if it's fields and forests right now. And in general, we have used the entire parcel boundary as our map. Sometimes we cut them off, but we often use the entire parcel boundary. That's because the map has meaning on the ground for policy, and we don't want people to go, where are you? We have, there are some people who think we should use slopes. Remember that Chelsea slope map was just like red blobs everywhere. Nobody would know where the heck we're talking about. But people kind of know, even though if you own land like I do, you don't actually know where your parcel boundary is. But people have a sense of where the parcel boundary is. So we try to use parcel boundaries when we can. Sometimes, like in these spaghetti lots here, we've cut them off just.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
For example,
Yeah.
let's take an arbitrary area.
Okay.
It's essentially, say, the size of 2 of your hands on a blue section or gray section of the map.
Uh-huh.
If you went in and you looked and you found 10 lots that were 1 acre and 20 lots that are 2 acres, what's the composition that would make it rural or not make it rural? How many tiny lots would make it?
There is no exact number. It's just enough of a conglomeration, because in general we try to smooth what we call smooth this area, so that it's not like, one dot, one dot, one dot. So think about connecting it when you're looking at the map. Go, well, they've made that rural, and we just want to extend it a little bit, or we want to connect these 2 areas or something, or maybe down here where it's a little more parcelized.
But if you're talking about rural, there must be Have you established something in your mind that's rural?
Yeah, we generally are looking at parcels under 20 acres. And we generally are looking at things not in current use, which would be 25.
Kevin, can I ask, I live over where the town forest is, and also the wildlife management area, Katy Brook. Now, are those considered just rural or rural conservation?
They're, on our map, they're rural ag and forestry right now.
Ag and forestry.
Yeah, the blue. The green is the rural conservation.
Okay. And can you just remind me how you are defining conservation as opposed to like the town forest?
It's just a different set of policies attaches in our rural conservation in terms of the biggest thing that is right now in our rural forest area that would go over to that is we have a policy that says you can't create more than 1 acre of impervious surface in the entire development, period. And so that keeps things relatively small. We also say you can't, I forget whether it's 10 or 20, but it's one of the two, that's the max number of structures you could build. So it's intentionally like, don't be building much out there. It isn't a no-build area though. And the other thing is we have essentially what you could think of as a little more toothy version of what you have in your town plan. So again, our regional plan has some of that covered. And then we have a mandatory conservation subdivision clause, essentially. So if you were to trigger Act 250, and you're in the blue or the green, you shall put most of the stuff at the edge of the field or the forest. And you won't go more than 300 feet into a forest edge. And we use 300 feet because there's some science out there that says that's kind of not so great anyways right now.
Do you have somewhere a list of the rules of the game, like you just mentioned about 1 acres or 10 acres or just what you described? Somewhere written down, is there?
That's our regional plan policies right now. Yeah.
I mean, in a summary.
Yeah.
In a summary form.
No, I mean, it's pretty summarized in the regional plan. We are going to take it and when we redo our land use section, we're going to have to basically come out and talk about this some more. And I basically go, here's rural ag and forestry, here's rural conservation. But they're only like 2 pages each.
Okay, so here we are. We're trying to get a town plan out.
Yes.
You're not done your town plan. How do we start? How do we proceed?
I would look at what we have right now as policies, and then we're going to talk about what you have.
Okay.
So I'm letting you know that this map is made. The big things I would think of where we've added on up in North Heartland, and we really went back and forth about this little chunk of rural that exists out here and whether or not that should be part of the village. And then we kind of extended 3 corners up Route 5 some. And there is a natural break here at the edge of the village as you leave on the curve there. And so this stuff here is, to me, is a little questionable. We're trying to get enough space for housing. And you may go, well, we'd rather you didn't that, and we'd rather you pick something else. We definitely went over here towards the school, and then south of the village, there's a big parcel over there. Yeah, down that way. Then we added it. Again, we don't look at does the landowner want to build there, any of that type of stuff. We just know it's not totally steep, it's not totally wet, and it's not under conservation.
Yeah, so we went mostly with, use the state highways, basically, to expand.
Yes.
The kind of thing you talk about.
And so you might go, well, these guys are all blue out on this road here, on Town Farm Hill, and we want some low density residential out there. Fine. That type of thing that doesn't get at cross purposes with us. Where you would get at cross purposes with us really is if your village was bigger than our village, because your village says principal retail is good there. And our village says principal retail only goes in there. And so if you had a bigger area, then you'd be allowing retail where we don't, and in Act 250 would be.
But suppose you had like what we've called on our draft is a mixed use area. And, you know, with not quite as open as the villages are in terms of the type of development, but still encouraging because it is, you know, with settlement patterns would be, you know, it wouldn't be a shock to see a new enterprise there.
It would be a shock. We have not connected those areas. My suggestion, right now you have a mixed use area. I think it's a little too connecting, and that's why we struck it in our version of it. I think that you could talk about that as more of and just leaving the language relatively vague in the plan, more of a higher density rural than out here rural.
Yeah, that's what we were going for.
Versus the mixed use. Because a lot of the commercial use in there starts to essentially go against that state goal of compact settlement and countryside.
Is there any equivalent language to mixed use in your?
We do right now, but we're getting rid of it because we can't really have that.
Could you give us a clue what the new name might be?
What?
What
new
the
name
alternative name
for
would be
mixed
for.
use?
Medium density residential or something. I think going forward, as we go forward, we will gladly, you know,
give you some language on that. I'm giving you the maps. I'm not giving you the tube. But yes, so this is a little version of that map. This is the current regional land use map, and so you have that green area as your overlay right now. That's where we took some data in the past and said these are the best areas in terms of habitat and connectivity and things.
Yes, actually, it looks pretty close to our.
Yeah, I think it's your polygon as close as you can.
What I'm also hearing, and this is an unfair assumption, but I'll say it anyway, is that you would rather that we focus on identifying area for housing rather than for stores or retail?
Somewhat, yeah. Especially think.
Well, that was our mixed use, was that it gave the flexibility to do sort of one or the other. But I'm hearing now, maybe we don't want to necessarily open up all of the retail or business type thing and more focus on that.
Yeah.
That area being available for housing.
Yes, I would say that supports the best with the regional plan. We don't have like things like restaurants in our view. They can kind of go wherever. And so if you want to say, oh, restaurants can go there, but restaurants can't go out in Jennyville or wherever, that's fine with us. I'm going to, so look at this map, give us stuff. I do this, I physically write on this for all towns because people get so nervous they can't write on the map. And so now I've broken the spell, you can write on the map. And what I encourage you to do is maybe use pencil or stickies at first when you kind of go, oh, we'd rather this stretch here is probably the most problematic to me in terms of there is a natural break as I go around this corner, but we're trying to get enough units in where you may go, oh, we'd rather they use some of this space in North Harlingen and do some units there, or maybe, I don't know, something over here on Three Corners. The way we did this is basically we looked at existing land, existing acreage, and tried to do a rough number of how many houses could go in there compared to your target, using 55% of your housing target, which for you guys is about 120 new houses could go in these red areas, we think.
So what was the number?
It's 220 overall is your target.
Yeah, would you
So
come up with in the areas?
it's about 120.
And what were the characteristics? Square footage in lots of?
Just use, we use an acre.
It's 1 acre.
Yeah. You can do a duplex on an acre though, if the soils are good. We don't look at the soils and stuff, but we basically go, is this thing all bony or whatever
What's the time frame for 220?
for,
For
2030.
May I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
You know, the civilian?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly the term I use, civilian.
Okay, so, that's my property.
Okay.
Next to it is someone with different privileges,
In the blue.
yes?
Yeah.
And then there's someone with my privileges,
Yep.
and then there's someone with different privileges.
Right.
This guy owns a lot,
Yes.
because we know that, because he comes in that way.
Right.
This guy doesn't own a lot. Why have you done this? I mean, I feel as though this has broken up the continuity somehow.
We did this because it's part of that parcel. This parcel, I couldn't tell you why, except maybe it's possible it's in current use. I don't know how big that parcel is, but it looks like it could be.
Is there a house on there?
25 acres.
There is a house on there.
Yes, it is.
So that's the type of thing where you may go, oh, well, for here,
And it's steep.
you know, just carry that rural across here, use this parcel boundary, and then snap it. We say snap this line. It's not a parcel boundary, and, you know, just do that.
So would I ask the planning commission to
Yep.
modify the map if
Yep.
that's the case?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, yeah, you guys are gonna give us suggestions. What you give us is not gospel. We may go, yeah, no, we're not
See,
gonna do it.
currently, we don't make the distinction. This is all rural.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you have this green overlay
Yes,
Yeah.
that you're basically gonna think about
yes.
on there.
Well, you've done it on the wind map too. You've taken my parcel and made it absolutely no wind, which is perfectly okay
Oh,
with me.
it's,
And then everybody all around me has the ability to build wind farms in my view.
well, the wind map is agnostic. The wind map is based on where there's wind. That's what drives the wind map.
I bet I have wind.
Yeah, we know we have.
Or if you're near a ridge top.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a lot of wind where we are, and there's less wind, like where Jay lives, and, you know.
And again,
Anyway,
even if you're in here, you can build houses. You just can't build them in the middle of the field if you trigger Act 250. And you gotta remember right now, any lot smaller than an acre, there are no rules. And anybody wanting to build 5 houses in the middle of any field in town, no rules.
That's an important distinction, because the town plan, especially if we make it anticipate that there's gonna be ordinances, the town plan would only have come into play legally in Act 250. So if you're not in Act 250, town plan wouldn't even.
Yeah. And far and away, most development does not trigger Act 250,
Right.
which is why some type of bylaws is the better bet.
Single-family homes don't.
so ordinances will come after the town plan?
Yes.
That's the thinking,
Is
yeah.
that the?
That's the thing.
There's a lot between the lip and the sip on that one.
Yeah.
It's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
But there would be separate ordinances.
Oh, yeah.
The town plan
Yes,
would not
and you
be-
wouldn't need Act 250 if you have the town plan, because the town ordinance would cover it. It's yes or no on the thing.
But ordinances would be separate from the town plan.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We have a buffet in front of us, so we're not sure when we're gonna eat each piece.
Okay, no, that's fine.
And it sounds like Twin Rivers it trumps everybody anyway, so it,
Well, that's what we're trying to determine, is how much we have in common with what they've done.
Yes, we don't trump the town in Act 250 if it's a substantial regional impact. If it isn't, if it's a 10-house subdivision triggering Act 250, your plan beats our plan. You've got to build, right now, 20,000 square feet of commercial space. So even Sunnymead wouldn't be substantial regional impact. Okay, town plan stuff. Good. We're less than an hour in. We're chugging along. So I'm seeing this. Do you know if the people on Zoom are seeing this? Or are they still
still seeing the other one.
Can we,
No.
Does Kevin advance the thing that's on?
He was,
Okay.
we were, but I don't see it now.
I'm gonna make, I think I may have been,
something blinked a little while ago. Oh.
so hopefully they.
Yeah, now we got it.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna go to the land use section. Again, Brian from our office, Brian Kovalik, is the main one dealing with the town plan. We really, we're not under contract with you, so we're giving you work right now because we want to make sure this thing moves. But as part of that, we are tight, and Brian is going to walk over to my office and go, "Can I keep working on this?" And I'm going to be like, "1 day or something." He's got very little time. So we're trying to get your town plan as good as we can get it done, out the door, over to adoption, and have it pass all the tests that it has to pass. The biggest thing, so I'm going to just talk about the land use section. So if you're in the town plan itself, we are going to talk about, and the June 4 draft, we're going to talk about pages 12 to 1 second.
This is the
12
one that Brian.
30. Yes.
Back in May.
And so this is what Brian sent in May, except you should have the June 4 version, and you'll know it because down bottom it will say June 4.
Yeah, that was sent to us.
And so the only thing that's changed between his version and this is in the land use section. That's my.
What page are you going to start on?
I'm going to start on page 12. Which is where land use starts, hopefully in your version.
I can't get a version on my tablet that has the changes.
Okay.
Key sticks. And I'm just going to go over kind of what we did and why, and we can have a little bit of discussion on that, and then I'll kind of take some notes, and I'll go back to Brian and say, here's what they're thinking. First off, if it's not a goals, policies, and recommendations, it does not carry weight. So don't worry if like, oh, they took out the background part or they kept background part. We've not worried about it too much. So I'm just going to focus pretty much on the goals, policies, and recommendations. We did put a little, some stuff in there on, we cleaned up that data a little bit, that type of thing. So you have some overall goals, policies, and recommendations, and then you have land use area by land use area ones. That's perfectly fine. And so what you'll see here is, for example, under land use goal 1, it isn't a goal. Goals are very broad statements. They don't say how you're going to do it.
I'm sorry, Kevin, what page are you on now?
So this should be page 16 of the 6-4 draft.
Okay.
Is that right?
Correct. Yes, it is.
So, and the strikeout stuff is obviously stricken out. The underlined stuff is new stuff. It may just be moved, but track changes thinks it's new. Don't care if it's blue or red or those colors don't mean anything. That just means different people are working on it. So here we've changed, we've taken out all this language about certain things, and we've moved it around. But the goal is just commercial development keeps the village centers vital. Overall goal, and then how you're going to do that, we do in a policy and recommendation. Most new residential development takes place in the village centers. Again, how are we going to do that? And protect the rural character and the outside part is how we simplify this. A lot of the language in your current goal 1 has merely become policy 2. So if you go, well, where we like some of that stuff, well, that's where it is. And then You had some stuff in goal 4 on the preservation of open space. And that has gone to policy 3. And then you had some stuff in policy 5 that's gone to policy 11. So first off, if you see, oh, they took it away, it's probably down in the policy, because that's probably where it was better living. And in general, what we have done is, if it said shall, it's become a should.
Okay.
And that's, we've done that for a reason, and so that's, I think, what Dan was talking about earlier a little bit. That has repercussions, but we've done that because what happens is, assuming we go to bylaw, and that's the idea, is you go to bylaw. If the bylaws have to, so this is for the civilians, bylaws have to further the purposes of the town plan. So if the town plan says, make small lots, you can do 1 or 2 or 3, what do we mean by small? Who knows? If the town says, use 2 acres in the district, you have to use 2 acres. So we're in discussions in a year from now, and people are like, well, what about 3? And I'll be like, no can do. Town plan said 2. So that's why, but if the town plan says should use 2, then it gives us wiggle room. So that's why a lot of these things I've said should. Okay. And then the details get hammered out, what you exactly mean in the bylaw.
Okay, this is a most important part.
Yes.
A lot, when we went through this document, Brian had some very good points, what was illegal now, took them all out, no problem, should and shall, major problem for the following reason. Your plan isn't going to be come into to help us, if you will, until the end of 2026.
The next regional plan.
Right. So what happens between now and then? Should we remove the shalls? What do we have for protection?
Okay, that's a great question. So let's break that down a little bit. What do you have for protection against what kind of development are you?
Well, let's use Sunnymead as an example.
Okay, so for Sunnymead, you would go to our future land use map. Let's say you don't have any plan on the whole thing, just paper.
No, but you don't have a land use map now.
Oh, no, we do. We just adopted it in February 26th.
All right, you have a map.
And we have policies. Yeah. And they have changed to address the Sunnymead situation. So our village boundary is basically Mike's store down on the south side. Our villages right now are considerably smaller than these red areas.
If I can tag on with what Jay was asking, and I think it's our concern.
Yes.
Is that I have heard that you're talking about that we have a backstop with Two Rivers. Our concern was that if we move this town plan through before we do bylaws.
Yes.
Is there any reason that we couldn't use shall to enforce it until the bylaws are created and then go back and edit? And then, because we want to have some sort of a hammer.
Yeah, well.
Or when we're closer in, we could conform see where the bylaws are headed. And,
yes.
I mean, the bylaws are now pie in the sky as far as we're concerned.
I have done such projects. Well, many things come into play. Right now, number one, if somebody's building 5 structures or less, 5 subdivisions or less, or a commercial lot under an acre, there is no Act 250. So what you have is a sieve, and what we have is a sieve right now anyways, and zoning eliminates that sieve.
Understood.
The second thing is the regional plan just carries full force with or without a town plan. And so if you were to try to build something that triggered Act 250, again, so if somebody were to go, oh, I want to be off in some field or forest and build 6 houses, they would be mandatorily required in any of, essentially in any of this green area, to cluster out of the forest, and if they were on ag lands in the not green area, to not build in the middle of the field. That would be a requirement under our current regional plan that's in effect now.
Right, and that's the difference between using that as a particular, that is a change.
That actually is the same. The change that we did around Sunnymead in particular is there we have this resource-based thing that was meant to deal with creamy stands and whatnot out in the hinterlands. And there we tightened that up and we made it very clear.
2,000 square feet.
Yeah, and so there we said that's a 2,000 square foot building.
Well,
And so somebody could build a 2,000 square foot farm store some places. But
So that's where you tied that up is the square footage.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that you can't build a building this size.
but you're the defender of the policy, not the town of Heartland. Should you not see things our way, and all of a sudden, we want this, we don't want you,
True.
then we depend on other people to defend what we have chosen here.
Yes, I would say don't worry about that much, because the thing you're worrying about is going to keep you from the thing that will be much more effective. Your question about, though, can we kind of do both? Can we get going along this path and then come back?
Sort of a safety net.
You don't need to edit it. We could draft it so that it sunsets on the implementation of a bylaw.
You
We
could. I've
put that right
never
in that
seen
document.
something like that, but
You could do that. I've written contracts that way.
But the thing is, your bylaw has to further the purposes of the town plan. And so if you have a town plan policy that evaporates when the bylaw is adopted, you go, well, what am I furthering the purpose of? I think we've given some circular.
I don't know that it evaporates. It's just that the shall is in place until the bylaws supersede them, in which case a should.
Well, but you'd have to have something in your town plan that says all shalls become shoulds if the town adopts a bylaw.
Let me write that down.
Which,
You say that
I mean,
Exactly, that's what.
and I don't, can you do that? I don't know.
This is not meant to be rude to anybody in here. I think you have a general sense of that we feel like we have been burned and we don't want to be burned again.
Yes.
And if you could just clarify for us, not right now, but shortly, with different scenarios, the town plan comes first, then the bylaws follow. They go through at the same time. We do the town plan and never do bylaws, those kind of things. And then answer our shall and should questions that we were doing partially based on earlier recommendations from Two Rivers, that we made sure that that language was in there. And we just want to make sure we cover ourselves now.
Yeah, there are other things in there where we would say, and I'll give you an example because we're dealing with Woodstock right now, where we actually don't think you want the thing that it says. So Woodstock's town plan right now says something along the lines of new development shall basically mimic existing development in shape, size, and form. And we're looking at the east end of, when I talk about the east end of Woodstock, we're out where Ace Hardware is and stuff, right? And so I read that and go, build things that look like Pizza Chef, because that's what you said in your town plan. And you go, no, we don't want to build things that look like Pizza Chef. And you just told me, mimic Pizza Chef, mimic the buildings that are here. And you go, well, that's not what we meant. And you go, well, that's what you said, and you made it a shall, so that's what you're going to get, folks. That's where you got to be careful about shalls doing things that you really didn't mean. And then again, that's where bylaws kind of be like, oh, this is, we've gone and fixed it.
Hey, listen, you know, this is my 45th year in the planning.
Is it really?
Yeah.
It probably is.
Do you know how many times or when Heartland had zoning? It had interim zoning in 1975. It lasted 6 months. Since then, we've made 5 different attempts at zoning, and you know how many have passed.
Yeah, 0.
Right.
Yes.
So you see why we feel insecure.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, and I've been doing this a long time, and I was involved in at least one of those, so it's not,
You were involved at least two of them.
Oh, maybe two. I've repressed one.
I want to make sure I understood what you said. Did you say that the regional can always utilize the regional plan and rely on it, and that it would take priority over the town?
I was saying the regional plan exists whether or not you have a town plan at all. So it isn't like, because you have a town plan, the regional plan gets more.
And we can argue the regional plan in an Act 250. We don't need them to do it. We can say, well, this is
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anybody can argue the regional plan.
We can always implement and rely on the regional plan.
In fact, you can literally adopt the law says, you can just adopt the
That's
regional
why I
plan
was
as your town
driving
plan.
at it,
You can just be like, we're done, that's our town plan.
But here was I haven't read it carefully.
Nobody's done it.
I might be wrong on this, but, where you tackled I'll call it the Sunnymead problem with square footage, we were focused more on commercial activity,
In a
as
rural area.
opposed to without really considering the size. You could have a tiny thing that parks 50 cars around it.
Yes.
And so the creamy stand. And so we were, trying to draft it that there's just try to keep commercial activity except for home-based things out of that area. And I'm not so sure that just restrictions, to use your example about what you put in the regional plan, that would stop Sunnymead now. It would stop Sunnymead, but it wouldn't necessarily stop other commercial.
Right, because right now in our regional plan, which this map is the regional plan right now.
If you're out in this rural area here and you want to build office space, or you want to build a restaurant, or you want to build any of that thing, we don't care. People actually give us grief on the Peacefield farm up in Woodstock application. We don't care.
Right.
We've never opposed that, actually.
And that's my concern.
Because we like.
I'm not sure you should care.
No, not a regional issue.
That's our town's problem.
See, that's where we're at cross purposes.
Yeah.
You have
Well, it's not
regional
cross
interests. We have immediate interests.
Yes.
And they don't necessarily go hand in glove.
Well, there are things that are smaller that may well bother you that don't bother us.
Right.
Yes. Back to your question though, Stephen, a little bit. I have worked on plans, mainly on bylaws, where we're under contract, we're working on the bylaw, and then we're like, we've got to fix the plan. And so we're like, okay, stop, wait, we're gonna go back. And we just end up, you think like, we can be out of this plan 90 days flat. And a year later, I'm still in a morass on the plan, and I'm trying to get back to our contract in the bylaw, and it just doesn't work very well.
I'm not necessarily endorsing the back and forth. I'm just trying to prevent being burned again.
Yeah.
But unless the thinking was that the bylaws were going to allow commercial development in the rural areas, and they didn't want the town plan to stop that, I can understand that. But at this point, I think we have to assume what even a minimal bylaw. And I wasn't surprised, but when you reacted when Tom told you how many pages.
He's got like 8 pages.
I was going to say, I've never seen a bylaw, and so.
No, it'll be like, as small as it can get is really about 20 pages. We're working on a model right now. The part that we're working on right now, which I think would be very useful for you guys going forward, is essentially this. It's going to be like side by side annotated right now. The model is because people go, why do we need all this stuff? It's almost like you go to the car mechanic and you're like, why do we need this stuff? And then you just start, this is like you open up the window and go, this is complicated looking. Like, let's just get rid of most of these wires and make it simple looking. And you just start ripping things out. And you go, whoa, you can't. Yeah, they put all those parts in there for a reason. So that's why this model we're building actually explains in very plain English why you have this and why you have this and why you have this. And I actually think a longer bylaw reads faster because it says this is actually why you got to do whatever the part is.
Right, just to remind you.
Yes.
In 2013, You came and you helped us write a bylaw that 2 years later, at 47 pages, was good. We thought it was good.
Right.
You know where that went, like all the
Right.
other bylaws.
Right.
Still on
So-
the shelf.
Yes.
So you were instrumental in that. And so I dug that out and I gave it to planning commission members to say, hey, if we're gonna have a bylaw, why don't we look what failed 15 years ago?
Right.
Or actually,
Yeah, we would write it as simple as we can, which is why, to me, the plan should kind of be relatively simple as well.
But if you were gonna, if we told you that we really don't want, if we just want them, simplest, small area, home-based commercial activity in the rural areas.
Yeah.
You could write that into a bylaw pretty easily. But why wouldn't you put it in the town plan now before you have the bylaw?
Oh, you could probably put stuff like that in the town plan, but I wouldn't list
That
the
would be
use.
shall.
I wouldn't list the uses,
Yeah,
because you're gonna,
you're boxing yourself in.
you're gonna have to write it like zoning, and it becomes very difficult to think of the things.
So how would you
I would
suggest
say
doing
things
it?
like, in whatever that future land use area is, in the rural areas, no commercial uses, but home occupation should be allowed.
And this is, and
That's almost exactly what we had.
That's
And
how
then
we,
the
but
courts
that's how
just
we
ignored
got
it.
burned.
But we
because
didn't
that was
have
aspirational.
firm language, and that's why this thing about the shall.
That was a should.
Yeah, we
and
used, we used an only. We used the word only and not shall, and they just,
And we've taken out, we use the word appropriate
Yeah.
to mean that's the only thing, and we have done away with that. We are like, so when we say not appropriate, now we say prohibited.
Prohibited.
It's exactly,
That's pretty
yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
it
'Cause
was
not
your
appro-
fault, it was your fault the word.
We used to write appropriate.
Think about it for a minute, though. We will not have perfectly aligned interests between regional and town. That's a given.
Well, I
will say
think,
that.
they don't have an interest, it's.
Wow.
it's
And
not-
a lot of your home occupations aren't gonna trigger Act 250.
But yeah, that home occupation thing, that was tricky.
No, but a commercial, here's the other example that I thought we got burned on was the yogas,
Yeah.
the B and B, which, they presented as, the same way Sunnymead presented as a farm stand.
Right.
They presented it as a B and B, as a Airbnb,
Right.
where it was really an inn, just.
But that's what they addressed. You're going in, the problem is, when we tried to define things, that's where we got on a slippery slope. Square footage is an absolute. It won't solve 100% of the problems, but if you think about it, that actually does address most of the issues
Yeah.
we would ever be confronted with. And it's not, you can't argue it. The damn fool square footage is exactly what it is. Or you could say the footprint, the ground level footprint. And you can't be more than one story, or something like that. That whole usage, is it an inn, is it a B&B? That allows people to argue.
Well, and you guys argued with that case, it was like,
Well-
do you have 16 people on site or 14?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's commercial activity, and in other words, they were presenting it like a home occupation. We had other problems with that section that we lost on. But to me, the problem was that we didn't have it explicitly defined of what commercial activity was and what commercial activity was allowed and, where to draw the line. And so.
I don't know that that lends itself
Because what
to
you're
a
opening, I
precise
hear what you're
definition.
saying, and I think that would go a long way to solve it. But someone can just come in with a project, a very
I agree.
intrusive project and
Agree.
just come 10 square feet under the thing and they're in.
I agree.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think my approach is just, you can worry about a lot of things.
We do.
Most of them aren't gonna happen. That's, in my emergency management hat, that's what I do, right? I'll be on radar tomorrow tracking storms. Because emergency management's all about the taillights.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
the fire department, where's your house is gonna burn down? Your house is not gonna burn down, pretty much. But they're over there in the $1 million trucks because something's gonna burn down.
And we'll look at the premium you're paying for the possibility.
Right, and we're okay with that. With here, I would say,
Don't worry about the tail.
don't worry about the tail, because so much of what you're gonna have, because right now,
What you're gonna have, and what all our towns are facing, is you will continue to chop up your farms and forests. And that's the threat to your town and every town. And it's the real threat to Habitat. And there is nothing Act 250 is gonna do about it.
To do about which?
Chopping up your fields and
Yeah,
forests.
Habitat.
But the other aspect is the commercial activity in a residential area does have an economic impact on, the
Yeah.
people who, and so to me, Sunnymead could have put that store anywhere in the rural area in town. I can't read anything in any of the decisions that would have said, it's okay there, but it's not okay.
yeah, the 9L scatter development thing, I think, was a bit janky, but,
The one on Rice Road?
no, in the decision.
The argument.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Because they use it is sprawl, but it doesn't further sprawl.
Well, my problem with that was that they relied too much on the interchange and not realizing that we had confined the interchange area to that little corner where there is development, and we pretty much used the highway as a demarcation where you can't do it, and they ignored that or didn't know about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, we're like, yeah.
Mhm.
We also didn't appeal the Dollar Store, which got built in Royalton, which was a similar thing, although their plan was a little more squishy than your plan was.
But that was wasn't it in the town though? It was the store, it's just the type of store that was the.
They built it adjacent to the store that was there for the
Yeah,
Welch's.
We lost on that, we lost on the Tractor Supply Plaza
In Bradford. Yeah,
But
we don't-
Sunnymead was on 5 acres, let's say, of the Pole property up by the, I don't know that we would have opposed it.
Yeah, and the whole accessory on farm-ish type thing right now, they're trying some carve-outs in Act 250 for those things. They're big carve-outs in zoning. Your zoning won't do much about those type of things anyways, because it's very easy to attach a business to a farm, is the best way to think about it, instead of a farm getting a business. You go, I want to do this, I buy one cow, I'm a farm. All you gotta do is move $2,500 worth of product, which I can move tomorrow. I'll make myself a farm.
And AOFBs, as they're called, accessory on farm businesses, are allowed throughout town. In your zoning, you can have them here, and you can't have them over here.
So you think just using recent history as a guide, the B&B and Sunnymead, that really it's not, we're spending too much mental energy trying to.
Yeah, I think I remember Tim Taylor on the glamping one being, if you only had zoning, being the way to go.
Thank you for coming. This makes you honorary members of the Planning Commission, just so you know.
Oh, they are, they already
We already were.
Oh,
They're,
are they thinking about joining?
no, they're diligent attendees.
Okay, good. So, the close down here, because I don't want to drive you too crazy.
And I'm sorry that we sidetracked.
No, that's all of that.
We learned a lot.
Very
That's
good.
right.
Think about this map, draw on the map. You're going to need to give us reasons. We will take it under advisement. But really, I would say, think about if you're shrinking the red area, make it bigger somewhere else. And you may want to, like, again, we want to connect that, or we want to, carry this rural over into here or something. Or there's some lands where you go, we'd actually rather you put this into rural conservation.
Listen, I'm looking at your map, and you're seeing the same things that we do.
Pretty close to ours, yeah.
It's very
striking how close it is.
We split the villages up, the corner here that you're talking about by the Martinsville Road, we added things there. We understand about turning this rural section, or this rural section into part of the village. We're very close, actually.
And so the big match thing between the two is not on here. It's because this boundary for us, when we get all said and done, will be where they can build stores. And you could make it smaller in your map, but we would want not, if you made it one lot bigger, we won't approve your plan.
Wait a minute, where are you again?
In any of the red areas. And so that's why if you really said, oh, you know, we want that lot in for whatever reason, I have no idea what these lots are, but I think there's a stream in it. But if you wanted some lot in, it's best to do it now.
That's a hillside.
Yeah.
And you think we're being overly concerned about that, because we're looking at this and saying, where are the places that you can't build stores that we want to keep stores out? And you're saying that might not be a good way to think about it.
No, I thought what he said is that if you're gonna make something small and remove the store here, add it someplace else.
No, but unless the store or the commercial activity, I'll use commercial activity because of something more than stores. But unless you have some language in your town plan that keeps out an Act 250 project, which is any commercial project, basically.
Yeah, and home
You're gonna
occupations
lose
are a
that,
weird
yeah.
thing in Act 250.
Yeah.
But for example, we say, you know, outdoor recreation, go to it out here. Whereas you might go, well, we want outdoor recreation of a certain size.
Yeah, look at Chittenden, what's going on there.
Right, I mean, we're like, okay, you wanna build a cross-country ski area out there?
Yeah.
I agree with Jay. I think that your map looks very similar to ours, which is, I guess, a certain degree of comfort. When we come out of Three Corners into Heartland Village and head toward North Heartland, and when we make the turn.
Right here at the edge of the village.
That's correct.
Yeah.
We have talked about including that as an extension of the village. However, I thought I heard you say, oh, there's a natural demarcation.
There is a natural break when you go around the
But
corner.
we could use it and not be off base with you?
Not be off base with us right now, although, I mean, I drove around Heartland because I had a little time here before our meeting, and I looked at this and I thought, you know, up here, okay, down here, there's a natural break. Again, for
We were looking at
housing. For, you know, this idea to me of in here, some area, smaller lots for housing.
Yes.
I think you can do, that would be,
What would we call that then?
you would not want us to do the village out here.
Right.
So
Because this is potentially full-scale commercial under our plans. Now,
if it was an extension of our current village.
this red area.
Right, but if it leaves there, how would we designate that area to encourage housing?
We don't have gradations of our rural.
So it's just rural.
So, yeah, but you can be like medium density rural, low density rural.
I'm much less concerned about the density of housing in the rural areas as I am about commercial activity.
Yeah, and so you would want us to be like, no, don't have that red.
No. Where you have the red is fine. No, it's out here
Oh.
that the town plan
Yeah.
couldn't stop a commercial.
Yeah,
project.
and so you can see where we stop it here
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, well, that's where
Your
Sunnymead is.
your red is our green mix.
Yes.
Yes, because we don't have a mixed
Well,
thing yet.
we didn't know we shouldn't use mix, so we'll name it after you.
But again, think about that and think about, well, do we want commercial in here? Or is this really more just that higher density, kind of neighborhood area?
Do you define those terms?
Commercial?
No,
What?
density. Because low density, medium density, high density,
We know,
they have no meaning to me.
right, we intentionally do that in town plans.
Okay.
At the regional scale, we actually do put numbers on occasionally.
What is a medium density, a moderate density?
Probably 2 acres or less. 1 acre is about all you can do if you don't have sewer and water anyways. 3 acres is kind of tight. 5, 10 acres is start to be spread out.
Could I make a suggestion on your map?
Yes.
It would, if, for people that haven't been there in your office, if you had contour lines, you would see that this boundary right here, that's like a 40% slope. It's not buildable.
Yeah.
So that we're gonna come back in and we're gonna say, no, we can't do that because look at the slope. So if you had contours, you might have a better idea.
We put steep slopes and stuff on here. The question is though, is this ag or working lands forestry? And the answer is no. It's trees, and it's not necessarily going to be built for housing, but it's not somebody's forestry lot for wood production or farm
It's not a
fields.
corridor.
Right, and it's not a high priority corridor, which you basically don't have. So it defaults to rural for us.
Anyways, I'm really glad that we've done this, different colors than we had. I'm sure we'll spend a fair amount of time.
And we actually have to use these colors. You don't have to use our colors, but we
You have to.
We have to.
Sometimes.
Yeah, there's a statewide standard now for our color.
Yeah, they've got the colors covered.
Yeah. And this
Nice
just,
legend here. That's-
yes, this just, and a transition area. We're not sure about what to do quite up here. We may leave that as a transition area. We may just take it out and put it in the rural. We're trying to, we don't want to, we don't actually want to see principal retail up here, even though there is.
Oh,
principal.
okay, because we were sort of.
Yeah, we were thinking that.
Yeah.
But you,
I don't feel strongly that it should be.
but you might say,
It's
and,
really not part of it.
and that's kind of in flux for us, because Britain's Lumberyard is not principal retail for our purposes.
Would that,
That's a service-based industry or research.
Well, Andrew Pierce would be principal.
Andrew Pierce would be
And
principal.
what's the climbing wall?
Yeah,
Just changed, what is it?
well, it's now
Arbor-
a greenhouse,
Property management.
Oh,
Would
probably.
you explain that
greenhouse,
when it was, how did you
no,
describe
there's
that?
some
It's either,
Oh, really? Then
Yeah.
aren't they-
oh, it's a land-intensive use, I think, for us.
Arbor-
Land-intensive use are things like nurseries, lumberyards.
It's a nursery.
Car lots,
Yeah.
things that use up a lot of land, but don't actually,
Yeah, the building itself is.
yeah.
Yeah, and so that feeds into my argument about what we don't want to have in our rural areas. We were pretty much, pretty much let the existing businesses go down there.
Yeah, the thing with Sunnymead really kind of, because the state is really grappling with that, it's really has to do with like, what are we gonna, how are we gonna help farms stay viable as farms? And as I testified to the legislature years ago, yeah, but what you didn't count on is people doing businesses and going, I'll stick a farm onto this business. And
Peter Raymond wrote a wonderful review of.
so, again, so your homework, think about the map, draw on the map. I will go through the plan again. Brian will be back later this, in July probably or whatever, on the plan. Our hope is to move that plan out of you, go to hearing, get over to select board. I hear your concerns about feeling a little naked in between. Again.
Well, if it isn't, we have to be optimistic that it is only an in-between, but I'm not given past history in this town.
And once you warn or hold, I can never remember which one, but there's a year from the time you clear it to the time it has to be adopted or it flares out.
Right.
And so you could essentially kind of wait a little bit because you got a valid plan in place now until that clock's running and maybe by then the bylaw is further along and you're comfortable with yourself.
That's exactly what we've talked about. How do we change the pace of the two separate projects so we end up, satisfied that we're protected?
Well, and so that's part of my thinking is on not having your brains explode is get this to a point where it's good enough to go to select board, then it's off your plate, it's on their plate, then your minds can turn to the bylaw. I think during the bylaw process, we'll hopefully find out, I think we'll get a sense from the public of like, well, this thing is, we're all gonna get crucified or not.
You know what had happened? There was a very, on the listserv in Heartland, there was something that, a statement that got people riled up about, and all of a sudden, we're seeing it all over again. Don't tell me what to do.
Well,
I mean, I'm
yeah,
just
yeah,
saying,
no, I mean,
it's there.
it's.
You gave me a little hope when you, darn, a lot of hope, I'll say it that way, it makes you feel better. When you talked about, no, that's fine. When you talked about bylaws being set up with, if you will, clear peril explanation. And I think, I don't guarantee that takes away concerns that people have, but it limits the argument about, oh my gosh, there's a hidden thing in there.
Right.
I would hope that would help a little.
For people who are reasonable and they kind of go, well, this is, confusing and complicated, what's it all do? You can go like, well, we'll just walk through all the pieces here. The slippery slope is the hardest argument. Like, oh, sure, it's a small bylaw now, but then you're gonna be.
Once you start, the
Right.
next thing you're gonna tell me what color my house is.
Right, and so we have various jujitsu moves to deal with that type of thing, but at the end of the day there's no good argument against slippery slope, except that's not actually how the world operates.
Yeah, well, it's just people trust you, they don't trust you. If they don't,
Right.
there's nothing you can tell them.
Right, like we did interstate speed limits, sure, there'll be bicycle speed limits next, and then walking speed limits, and then, you kind of go.
Or they're gonna keep reducing.
You can make
the
a
speed
slippery
limit.
slope argument about anything, you go, see, but that didn't happen over here. So, again, it's kind of one of those, don't worry about things. But, I mean, we saw it, there was a piece on NPR this morning about flood communities, and we had the mayor from somewhere going, you can't tell people what to do because they were in places that had flooded where they say you have to jack your house because that's what the bylaw says. And they're like, how can you tell people what to do? And my answer to that is, okay,
How can you save their lives?
You
How
could
can
be
give
like,
them money.
you could be like, well,
my taxes support the emergency
yeah, we
service.
get
It's
to
gonna
tell you
come
what,
and rescue you.
we get to tell you what to do because you get disaster money. You want a free-for-all, like, we'll just not come.
But there's a lot of sentiment these days for a free-for-all.
There is a lot of sentiment for free-for-all. Most people who want free-for-alls have never been in places that are actual free-for-alls. And they are not pleasant places.
No, there's a lot,
They're
a lot
full
of
of
the world is
gangrene and
free-for-all.
amputations and a whole bunch of other
Yeah, you
things.
don't wanna live there.
Warlord checkpoints is one of my favorite things to run into, on the way home, right?
I just want, no, you finish it.
No, that's it.
I was going to say, you were very helpful, you gave us good advice. And I would offer you one piece of food for thought. When you said, don't worry, you should also remember the other side of the coin. If it can happen, it will.
It will, and that's why, to me,
What could possibly go wrong?
the thing that's happening, and again, the thing that I hear from my own town, the thing that people actually worry about, and the thing that happens much more often, is somebody goes and builds the house in the middle of the field. And everybody goes, I can't believe they built that house in the middle of that field. Now I'll have to look at that forever. And you go, exactly. And that is happening at a far greater pace than everything else is. And so I would worry about that. That said, in my town, I live in Pomfret, where they go, we don't want that to happen. And I go, you zone the entire town for 2 acres. What don't you understand about it? It's going to get turned into 2-acre lots. And they say, well, nobody can do that. And you're like, but that's exactly what your zoning says.
And we can't stop that with a town plan.
Town plan,
It's not an ordinance.
no, but a zoning could, and our
Yeah,
town,
zoning.
and our town zoning could, but I struggle there with the town, and I go, because they go, nobody's gonna do that, and I go,
why do you think it's happening everywhere else? It'll happen, your rules say it can happen. So the same people who don't want it to happen and don't do anything to make it happen are also the people like, it's just, they just so don't want to tell anybody any rule that they convince themselves they don't need to tell anybody any rule, and it'll all be fine. And it isn't.
It's like, warnings on cigarette packaging.
Right. And again, I think far and away when people actually see what stuff means on the ground, you go, oh, you can actually build the houses all along the edge over here, and you get to sell house lots, and they all get to look at the field. They know they're looking at the field forever. Those house lots actually, and they don't have to pay taxes on the field.
Well, it would be a good irony if Sunnymead gets built and we can just point to that and say, here's why you need someone.
Well, and that's usually where we see it with the hillside development. If somebody builds one house on the hill.
Yeah. But you have to, we're in the position where we're worried about, we don't want the first one to come in, and that you have to wait until, everybody can.
And so think about, and also in terms of that, think about down here. This is rural ag and forestry for us. Think about this little section down here. How do you want to connect that?
Yeah, well, there's a section in here that we've looked at for.
Yeah,
good, even a hotel or something.
Could somebody send me this drawing file? And what I'd like to do is take it, and I'd like to take what we've been working on for 2 years, superimpose them to see.
Yeah, we can send you this. This is a 40 megabyte file. We can send you this more as a straight image, probably.
Yeah, do that. That's perfectly fine.
And then you can move it around.
Yeah, you see the lines.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, Kyle in our office, Kyle Hansen is the person who draws the maps.
What happened to Pete? Fellows.
Oh, Pete's still drawing maps, but he's not drawing these maps for the whole region. He's got other things to do. So Kyle is like, he's our newest planner, and it's good for him because he has had to literally look at every parcel in the region with pulling up all these data sets underneath. So he knows a lot of the region now more than he used to. Yeah, we look at slope, prime ag soils, wetlands maps, forest blocks, connectivity blocks, current use, conserved lands, obviously the parcel size. We look at all those things and kind of mush them together. And there may be, I don't know, like over here, I don't know what Mark's land use area comes in over here.
Well, this is West Windsor here.
Yeah, but I could see like, there's obviously some big parcel areas that.
Oh, yeah, once you even cross the line, the parcels get bigger.
But anytime we do a border town, we share it with the next regional planning commission.
That's right. This is out of your jurisdiction, right?
Just so. Yeah. Oh, nobody's out there. Oh, George's still there. Hi, George. Let me do another little quick thing. I'm just going to go to. Share this, so you can see what we're doing here. So this is for you, George, out there, but for everybody here too. Right when you go to our website, right up top, 2026 regional plan. We have the 2025 in place now. So you go here and you can find everything you want to see about that. We have an email just for people commenting on the plan. We have stuff, because in some towns, they're all confluent about tier 3 areas, which is not our map, but some people think it's our map, and what is it going to be? And you go to land use board and talk about that. So if you hear people come on, like they're making a tier 3 map. No, they're not. Land use review board is talking about tier 3. go there. There's a link on Tier 3 resources right here. Then we do general sessions where we talk about this without talking about anything specific on the town. This is when we're actually meeting with all the towns, so towns can see when they're coming up. And as we meet with towns, he says, this is a huge file, so.
What's the format?
This is a ArcMap GIS. But as we meet with towns, we release the town level maps. Now, let's see, it'll build here. So I just did like a path and white one. I'm gonna try to, it should show up here. Yeah. And so as we meet with towns, like now we're down here, we release the town map. And then you can see it. And so that's some of the easiest way, because if you go on our website now, that's instant, you can zoom way in on that. And then we're going to be over this neck of the woods, and then this neck of the woods we do last.
Oh, so that's filling in, so
Yeah.
oh, okay.
So those are all the towns we have met with County Target tonight.
You can see this map here.
Yeah, and so that map is really, you could really zoom. And so this may be what you want, Jay. I don't know if you want an image or.
Yeah, an image. I mean, I don't know how big a JPEG file is going to be, but.
It's a massive.
Well, let's see. Hey, I tell you what. Let me figure it out.
Okay. But Kyle Hansen would be the person in the office to say.
Okay.
What do you want? And then we, of course, we're going to try to build a map that's a map. Brian, I don't think Brian can build a map. I know I can't. But it probably would be Kyle even building the town plan map, because we'd probably start with ours and then just do different things to it. But again, if you wanted to say, oh, these should be just rural in our whatever you want. That type of thing. Okay, so draw in there, think about where you're willing to create some slack in here. Okay, I'm gonna stop my share. Because I'm all done there.
Is what's in there.
I'm gonna stop my Zoom. Focus on that Zoom.
Yeah, perfect. Put my email there.
Okay, all of that same. It's interesting, in most of our towns, they expected that all the stuff would be around, where's the village edge? In talking with towns. And for a lot of towns, it's more, where's the blue versus, and the green, for a lot of towns, it's really where's the green? Because some towns, the green is really bothering for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, one of the few things that was clear on the survey we did is that the largely rural aspect of the town is what people.
Yeah, and again.
They're finding stuff in the villages.
Yeah, and again, that's where subdivision bylaws, even more than zoning, really drive a lot of that. How do they chop up the farm field? Because once they've chopped it up, the houses are going to go on the block.
Yeah, once you do this.
But, I mean, the one thing we have going for us is that subdivisions are triggered at a much lower.
Yes.
So the zoning is going to have to take that into consideration because the Act 250 overview is going to get big.
Right. But you can stay down, remember that. You don't automatically go up to a higher level.
Oh, okay.
The town just basically says, we want to
I
stay.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, we want to stay at the 1 acre.
But you have to specifically do that, otherwise you'll automatically go.
Correct. Okay, you've got maps,
Yeah.
I've left maps.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you all.
Really helpful.
I know you guys can do some business stuff.
Hopefully not much.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any other, the only other thing on the agenda was the history of the recent townwide survey, but we touched on that. I think we can go to new business. The item I had would be a executive session, so.
Does that include?
Yeah, so maybe we should.
To do what? We can't have an executive session
Yeah,
tonight.
no, I was gonna, we can if we don't take action. We can go into executive session to discuss things, so.
Yes, I would much prefer to be in executive session to discuss things.
Sure. Oh, yes, yeah.
Because it's a member.
Yeah,
person.
it's personnel things. So why don't we,
Can we,
anybody,
have a second item in the executive session that may have to do with our statement about Sunday? Does that have to be in executive session?
no, that can, we could do that now.
You want to do it now before we go into executive?
Yeah, I thought
I really, it's 8:20. If you want to,
mine's gonna take 5 minutes max.
Yeah.
So, and yours is, and we've all seen what you wrote, and I think every.
I would just read it, and then it would go in the minutes.
Yes.
And we're good.
Okay, for Sunny meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll send you.
Oh, yeah, if you send me,
So you don't have to worry about it.
Yep, that's great.
So, I've drafted a statement from the planning commission about the ruling of the meeting, and I'll read it to you.
Sure.
The Heartland Planning Commission received notification from the Vermont Supreme Court that the court had ruled 3-2 in favor of case 24 AP 232, which is in regards to SM Farm Shops LLC et al. In their permit appeal. The HBC has pursued the case because it believes that the proposal, being a large commercial development project located in a designated rural area, did not comply with the Heartland Town Plan. I would propose that that be our commission's statement.
All right, so I'll take that as a motion.
That's second.
Okay. All in favor of that? Okay. All right, thanks for doing that.
All right, so I'm gonna send that to, who's it going to?
It goes in the minutes.
Okay,
Yeah, so we can refer people to the minutes.
okay.
I don't think it has to be distributed, it just has to be in the minutes.
Yeah.
Just wanted to be clear.
I think that's fine.
It's just that we can point people to, that's the position that we took regarding the appeal.
Yep.
All right, is there anything else before we, because I think we should adjourn the meeting, go into executive, so we don't have to come out.
That's fine.
All right, so anybody want to move to adjourn?
I so move.
All right.
Wait a minute, I'm supposed to be writing this down.
You guys got me through this pretty good, all right. So yeah, end the Zoom thing, John. So, get the people off. Yeah, the meeting's over, so.